Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a great show for you today. First up, let's talk about abortion rights and how it's really impacting Black women, where Black women organizations around the country are organizing to change the decision. We'll be checking in with culture crew member Farajii Jones to get her take on the situation. Also, we'll be discussing some national news stories with culture correspondent Ashley Banks to bring us up to speed on all the latest issues across the country, such as the Augustus riot that happened back in 1970. We'll bring you up to speed on that discussion as well. And then there is the first all-Black team that has summited Mount Everest. Yes, folks, a group of Black explorers and mountain climbers have decided to take on the big one, and they did it. We'll talk about the impact and all that and so much more on today's edition of The Culture. So, you know what time it is. Tell your family and friends we are on and we're streaming, and it's time to rock and roll. It's The Culture right here on Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. The big conversation that is still happening across the country is this discussion about the Supreme Court opinion that was leaked, that draft that was leaked. And there is a number of discussions about it, but more importantly, there are a number of groups that are organizing it around the issue, making it their priority to see if something could be done to make sure that the historical decision of Roe v. Wade won't be overturned. And most importantly, there are a number of Black women that have decided to come together to pool their resources and use their power to make sure that Black women are in support of abortion rights. Take a look at that, folks. The mantra of Black women organizations around the country is "We can never go back." I wanted to have this discussion with my sister. I'm so happy that she's able to join us. We missed her for the past couple of weeks, but Farajii Jones, one of our great culture crew members, checking in. She is a strategist. She's an entrepreneur. She's a nonprofit leader. And she is an activist within the LGBTQIA community. Let's welcome her into the conversation. Farajii, good to see you, sis. How you feeling this afternoon?
Farajii, I'm feeling good. Good to be here, man.
Good. I'm glad you are able to join us. Farajii, I had to bring you in on this conversation. I was like, I miss my sister, and I wanted to get her analysis, her insight around this. Especially because of the impact that it has on Black women, and there are a lot of women that are organizing, Farajii, around this issue, and I don't know if we truly understand how serious of a decision, even though it has not been finalized, how serious of a decision this would be if it goes forward. First and foremost, what's your take on where we are in this discussion about the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned?
In preparation for today, this is something that's been on my mind, and excuse me, I think I cannot say there's any sweetness associated with this. I was tempted to say it's bittersweet, but I think we've talked so much over the last few months and weeks about specifically Democrats and folks wanted to kind of feel a little more fire, right? A little more fiery and a little more passionate, a little more gusto when it comes to organizing. So this isn't necessarily something that I see as positive in any way, shape, or form, but it's kind of hard to not see some of the beauty in that this leak has created, and the energy and the re-energizing that this moment has had around just education and awareness about abortion, as well as the outpouring of support that I know a lot of abortion related organizations are now experiencing as a result of this the leak. So it's not something that I see as positive, right? But we're able, like, if you kind of, as they say, like, eat the meat and leave the bones. If we can take anything positive out of this, it's like, okay, well, we see that people are organizing and galvanizing one another in a way that we think is going to be really impactful. So my work is not really centered around abortion specifically, but I think just knowing the dangers around the potential decision, right? I think that there's always this temptation to include our so-called morals in the conversation around abortion, and our beliefs individually about what someone else should be able to do to their body. And the thing that, when we look at the data around abortions, before and after abortion is legalized in so many different places, we just know that the number of people, all people, not just Black women, but all women across the board that are going to get abortions, the only thing that we really the only thing that increases is the number of unsafe abortions, because there's no place for these folks to go to be seen in a healthy manner that's going to allow them to be cared for properly. So, when you think about the number of resources, folks that now have to travel, the danger that some of those folks will be in physically, if, conditions being exacerbated because they now have to travel to receive abortions, it's something that, the ripple effect for it is so, the potential for that ripple effect is tremendous. So it's not, again, I'm not happy about it, but it's something that I'm like, man, this is, I think, some of that, like, fuel to the fire that we've been talking about for the last several weeks.
I think I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of fuel in this fire, right? I mean, this whole thing, and like I said, I don't know if we're having the right conversations within the Black community about this issue. Now, among Black women, yes, I think hands down, I think a lot of Black women, regardless of where they are in their life, I mean, this is so pertinent. But I don't know if it's a community discussion as it needs to be, because a lot of times, having an abortion in the Black community culturally was a hush hush thing.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that families discussed.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I personally have family members who have had it and have contemplated both on both sides. And it's like, even those conversations is like, yeah, it was like in confidence, in confidentiality. It was like, and it was on the side, and it was like, oh, were you pregnant? And then it's like, no, don't talk about it. I mean, it was just a lot of mystery surrounding the discussions. So how do you think, do you think that will change now that we are in this place with the possibility that abortion rights may be dramatically changed? Do you think that level of secrecy and mystery will be penetrated?
I think that we're in a time now, I think that because of the impact of social media and just the potential and power of media in general, I think there are going to be, I think, more people telling really honest and candid stories about their abortions.
Yeah.
Which I think that level of storytelling is one of the things that we see, and we know that, people tell their stories, they share a level of vulnerability with, folks, and that starts to change opinions. It starts to change hearts and minds. So I don't necessarily know how, what that correlation will be directly to stigma around receiving abortions. But I do think that if there are people who are able to come out and say that I had an abortion, or, a loved one had an abortion, whatever the case may be, I think folks that are able to tell that story position themselves to help shape the narrative. And I think that there are so many people that think about abortion. My perspective is that people think about abortion in this very abstract way, and they might have an opinion that they've developed in a sort of bubble, right? And it has no relationship to what the experience of the sister on their right or their left may have experienced. There's so many different reasons that people choose abortion, right? So and again, even with that, there's no one story to tell that's going to compel everyone. But I think that one of the things that I'm looking forward to is broader conversations about just understanding abortion. I think that especially, we are still in the aftermath of a puritanical culture, right? So there's so much stigma and so much religiosity connected to these decisions. But I think that when we look at disproportionately putting women, especially Black women, in danger, I feel like we have to have those conversations about why this choice is necessary, right? So we got plenty of time and space to have a conversation if you want to use that energy to persuade people not to make that choice, but to take the choice away from people altogether. That's something that I'm hoping that organizers and activists that are more, closely and directly related to the abortion space are going to be able to move some things forward.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I want to share with folks and some of the data about the impact that abortions have had on Black women. Keena, let's show that a little bit, brother. Here's some of the latest data, folks. For this from the CDC, Black women are 3 times more likely to get an abortion than white women. This is data from the CDC for disease control and prevention. White women have the lowest abortion rate, 6.6 abortions per 1,000, and Black women had the highest abortion rate of 23.8 abortions per 1,000 women among the 30 areas that reported race by ethnicity for 2019. There was also a University of Colorado Boulder report that was published last year showing that banning abortion nationwide would lead to a 21% increase in the number of pregnancy-related deaths overall, and a 33% increase among Black women. This is something else. So if you're and this is what I take from the data, and Bakari, definitely correct me if I'm wrong on this based on what you understand. That if women don't have the ability to make that decision, that it will actually lead to more deaths.
Yep.
In the hospital, literally. More maternal deaths.
Literally. So there's so many converging points of data, right? And this is not my area of expertise, right? But right. As someone that is, another Black woman, right, in this space, it's like this is a right that we should have. There's a study that I was reading about that was in Romania, and in 1965 abortion was legal, and there were 220 deaths for every 100,000 births. And by 1989, so 24 years later, that number was up to 120 deaths for every 100,000. So when you think 120 out of 100,000 is not a significant number, but when you multiply 20 times 6, right? So that death rate increased by 6 times over the course of 24 years. Because women were not able to get safe and healthy abortions. So Black women are already at outrageous rates for maternal or child, death related to childbirth in general. And I feel like this just further complicates that matter. So to me, this is ultimately an attack on Black bodies. And I think people can decide again their perspectives on abortion and when and where and how abortions should take place. But again, for me to remove that as a choice, to remove that as an option, as a safe option for the woman who is, choosing to have that service performed, I just think it's so blatantly unfair. And again, there's so much that goes into even making the choice to have an abortion. So to just remove it as an option altogether, the cascade and the ripple effect of who it puts in danger. And also, from a death perspective, it's the woman that is choosing to have the abortion, but it also puts so many other people at risk now. And I don't have the states off the top of my head. I don't know if anyone that's on YouTube knows those numbers, or the details, but there's certain states where if you support a woman getting an abortion, you also run the risk of, I believe, prison. So yeah. There's so much danger and damage being done. And, kind of it forces us to ask the question, why this level of control on our bodies and not this same level of investment? We talked weeks back about education in schools and what the Don't Say Gay bill. Why not that same level of investment in, educating folks around smart and healthy decisions, family planning resources, et cetera. So It's
Well,
wild, Farajii, and yes, it's incredibly dangerous physically for anyone that wants an abortion to have this safer option removed. And that, people talk about the hangers and the back alley abortions, from years and
whew.
years, ago. Like that's what we are turning back the clocks to. So
Here's the other part about this discussion, Bakari. One is that a lot of black women are deciding to throw their hats in the ring into the political ring to start running for office simply because of this issue. That we may see this explosion even more than what we've already seen over the past 5 years. This explosion of black women in public office. Um, is there if, as far as you understand, in terms of political organizing, especially around big agenda items like abortion, do you see there being a con to this pro? I like to see more black women getting into public office, but could there be a con to this explosion if they just do it based on this one issue?
I think abortion is such a we have a lot of polarizing issues in our country.
Right. Oh,
But
no
I think
doubt.
abortion is one that's especially polarizing. It's uniquely polarizing in that I think it polarizes people across racial lines. So I could see. I don't know that it would necessarily be like a level of blowback, but something that I could see is, I think if you say you are pro-choice, that in a lot of people's minds resonates as you are anti-life. So that's the same conversations we've been having about, just because I am pro-black does not mean I am anti-white, right? Just because I'm pro-choice does not mean I'm anti-life. So I could see it becoming more polarizing in that sense, because I think that we tend to see things in this very black or white context. And so if someone comes out initially and the space that they come out, or the issue they come out around, is being pro-choice, I could see that as being the one of the things that's going to impact their potential political trajectory, right? That's something that that they'll be framed as. And I think especially with a lot of Republican candidates, that's probably going to be something that they would be able to use to slander them throughout the course of their career.
Let me and I'm glad that you made that point, because I feel like there needs to be some sensible conversation about the issue, without all of the extra emotions, that if you are pro-choice, that you do want to make sure, one, the health and the well-being of the mother is good, and that if the woman decides to move forward with the pregnancy, the health and well-being of the baby is good. So, I mean, I agree with you. You know what I mean? And I mean, I know this is a more of a cultural point, and more so than anything. But if a woman doesn't want to be a mother, she shouldn't be forced to be a mother. You know what I mean? We live in a community. And I'm saying among black people, where we know that some black women, you could tell that they wish that they weren't mothers. And I'm not trying to be mean or throw shade on anybody, but it's just like, you have to have you have to be mentally, emotionally prepared to be a mother, and not feeling like, oh my gosh, you were kind of backed into a wall into this.
Farajii, you're a parent. You know how many resources you need to be a parent, and it's
right.
If a child is lucky enough to have both of their parents, right? And the thing that is really troubling, I think, about one other thing that is especially troubling about this is, this the ability to sort of pretend that there's not, an additional, like, other pieces of this pipeline that exists, right? So you could be pro-life, but you are, the resources to support children who are in foster care. Where are those resources, right? Like, all of the resources that child, should that mother be forced to carry that child to term and give birth, so on and so forth, the resources that child needs for throughout the rest of their life, we don't have that support either. So
no,
it's such a wild sort of argument to be having. One, just when it comes down to just autonomy and the ability to choose. And I think the other cultural piece, for us is acknowledging that Black folks are under attack, right? Like we are experiencing genocide. And so it is hard, I think, for a lot of folks to not see the killing of it's hard. Again, I know from an abortion standpoint, I know abortion educators would sort of argue kind of like where a fetus becomes a life, right? So I don't want to I'm not an expert in that space, but I know for a lot of people, it's like there's a fetus, there's life. If we are experiencing genocide, why would we kill in life? And I think that ultimately that is the decision of, that person who has to make that decision. None of us get to force anyone else to make any decisions about their body. I think we all deserve that level of autonomy. So I think that's just another cultural element that, we have to be able to discuss both that and the need for autonomy.
No doubt. And let me just share this very quickly as we wrap up this conversation, the implications of Roe v. Wade being overturned. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, according to one report, they say that 26 states will be impacted. Essentially 40 million childbearing age women will be impacted if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Here's the other one. According to the Guttmeyer Institute, which is a nonprofit pro-choice abortion, pro-choice group, they reported last year that 22 states already have anti-abortion laws on the books that would kick in as soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned. 22 states. Let me name them for you, folks. Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Utah, Texas, Tennessee, South Dakota, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming, and then an additional 4 Republican-controlled states, Indiana, Montana, Nebraska, and Florida, are poised to pass laws restricting abortions. Man. This is a real serious issue. And you said it, earlier, Bakari. There have been a lot of polarizing issues on the table. This might be the most polarizing outside of race. You know what I'm saying? Like direct, like outside of like reparations and some other direct race related issues. But this might be one of the most polarizing issues that this country, you got pretty much like half of the country is for it, the other half is against it. And folks, if you live in those states, if you are use your voice, and this is what I'm saying about being an involved citizen, you got to use your voice to speak out. Some of these big states, like Alabama, if you're living in Birmingham, if you're living in Phoenix, if you're living in Little Rock, if you're living in Atlanta, you know what I mean? If you're living in North Dakota, or if you're living in like Cleveland, in Ohio, if you live down in Charleston, South Carolina, I mean, you know what I mean? Like all of these places, these aren't like backwoods places. These places contain some of the most concentrated areas for Black and brown and poor whites in the country. And so it's important that we do have these conversations, but more importantly, to look at the impact of it. So we're going to have to, of course, we're going to continue to discuss it on this show, but they're supposed to be having a meeting, and I think the meeting had already happened, or it's going to be scheduled to happen, with Judge Roberts is discussing it with the associate justices. But they're going to be looking at this, not just from the security breach side, but I think that now that they got a sense of where America stands, I think they're going to go back and say, all right, are we serious that we want to do this? Because if we do, this is going to cause a massive earthquake in this country. And this is something that we may not be able to handle. So we'll have that part of the conversation. But for Black women, and I know there are a number of Black women organizations out there, this is a big, big issue. And to your point, Bakari, Black women already don't have agency over their own body. Y'all don't have no autonomy. Y'all have no voice, unfortunately. And that can't be codified in policy. That just can't be codified in policy. And I hope that organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, the Congressional Black Caucus don't go along to get along when it comes to this issue. You got to protect and show that you're willing to empower women during this time and not enslave them. Mm-hmm. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to be checking in and discussing inflation in the country. As we all know, prices are going up around the clock, all across the spectrum from gas to consumer products. Well, we're going to discuss how inflation is impacting the Black community in particular and what we can do to change and stem the tide so that way we don't be left out there in the lurch. We'll have that conversation. Then at 4 o'clock, we're going to check in with our culture correspondent, Ashley Banks, to give us the latest on some of those trending national news. So we got a lot to get to. So stay with us, folks. You're tuned into the culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood-Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network. A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
All right, folks, let us now switch gears, talking about what's going on with the economy. As you know, the economy is in an inflation. Right now, we have inflation is up 8.5%, according to some of the recent data around where we are economically. And it is taking a toll on Americans, being one of the top issues that Americans are concerned and worried about, especially going into this year's midterm elections. President Biden has come out on record to say that the inflation is one of his top priority. He said that the factors for inflation has been everything from the pandemic coming to an end to what is happening into Ukraine with Ukraine and Russia. And so there are a number of factors out there, and we wanted to at least have the discussion to see how does this impact our wallets and purses? How does this impact where we are? In a few moments, we're going to be joined by Mr. William Spriggs, who is an economist from Howard University. But I wanted to bring back Culture Crew member Bakari Jones to talk a little bit about this, because Bakari, when we see the fact that prices have gone up, we're seeing that people are trying to figure out how to make ends meet at this point. Yesterday we had a conversation with realtor Cassandra London, where we discussed rising rents. I mean, it just seems like, and Cassandra said, she said, regardless of where you go in the country, you're not going to be able to run from it. There's no place that is immune to inflation at this point. Mm-hmm. But the thing I'm more concerned about is, people are already still trying to recover from what COVID-19 did to the economy. Mm-hmm. Families, single folks, everybody, I think, I mean, there are some of us who in the community who are like, who are able to kind of weather the storm of COVID, still keep their jobs, work from home, still earn their paychecks. But a lot of us, things had to shift. Folks have left their jobs. Of course, we know about the Great Resignation. Yep. Gig workers had to make some adjustments. They've taken on 2 and 3 different gigs. And now we get hit with high-ass gas prices. We get hit with, certain, items at the grocery store, consumer products going through the roof. I'm trying to see if the Biden administration, what do you think he can really do outside of what he said he can already do, or outside of what we have been traditionally understood and know about inflation?
Farajii, I'm not sure. Just point blank period. I'm not sure. I think that I guess it's another instance where I'm not sure that are we asking the right question, right?
Yeah.
Are we asking the right question in terms of what Biden can do? I think that the idea of some of these massive corporations receiving bailouts and receiving tax breaks and being able to raise their prices, on par with inflation, in ways that they don't necessarily need to or have to sustain through this time frame. I'm not even sure if that's the right question, because it, one, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's passive, but I think it puts us in an even more vulnerable position, right? So I would have loved to listen in on the conversation yesterday to hear, how do we protect ourselves? Because those are the questions that I'm asking myself, and wondering more about, who will those policies impact, once Biden does make some decision, and how long will it take for that ripple effect to be felt by the folks that are most marginalized? The idea, the concept of people being in middle class, those who have a little bit more discretionary income, they're spending more on utilities, they're spending more on gas, they're spending more on food, but it's not impacting, their sort of baseline of needs. The folks that are already left out of that conversation when it comes to a significant amount of discretionary income, what happens to those folks in the meantime as we're waiting for those decisions to be made?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we wanted to have the conversation about this. And I want to welcome Mr. William Spriggs, who is an economist from Howard University, to join us to answer some of those pressing questions as to what Black folks, Black households, Black families, and single Black people can do to kind of weather the storm of this economic uncertainty. Mr. Spriggs, thank you so much for being with us here on the Culture on the Black Star Network. We truly appreciate it, brother.
Thank you for having me. Bakari asked the right question. We have been buffaloed into the wrong discussion. So let's be clear what the debate is really about. Because we keep getting the headline, there's horrible prices going up. You're being buffaloed into a discussion that misses what the real debate is. So you're banting about the word inflation without being careful, and you have to be careful. Most people's interpretation of inflation is people are demanding too many things, their incomes are too high, and they're demanding more goods than the economy can produce, and they're bidding up prices. That's what people hear, and then they get upset. The Republican spin on this is the American Recovery Plan gave too many people too much money, and that this was wasteful, and that households have too much money, and as a result of those policies, we're now all suffering inflation, and what we need is austerity. So you're being pulled into a debate to be upset about last year when people got the refundable child tax credit, when people had been given extra money when they were unemployed, and when people got the $1,000 recovery check. You're being told that was bad policy.
Right.
So
that's crazy,
now,
Mr. Sprigg.
So now, listen to what they're saying. When the president says, I want the rest of Build Back Better, I want to expand access to childcare. You want to spend more money. We already have inflation. You already pumped this up. You're the cause of our pain. And now you want to spend more money. What a stupid idea that you want to give childcare.
Right.
People are saying, I want student debt relief. I'm carrying around all these student bills. I want relief. You want more money. That's why we have this problem. You're the source of the problem. And that stupid Biden wants to do more. He wants to make inflation worse. You understand? That's the debate.
Right.
So when you get sucked into that and you play it up, you got to be careful, because am I playing into a belief that the government's the problem here and the government has given me too much money?
Since a distraction, the debate itself is the way that this debate is framed in and of itself is a distraction. So the deeper conversation that we should be having is
this. We have not finished the fight with COVID. All these people want to still rail against, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to be vaccinated. I want to dismiss the idea that COVID is a problem. They're the problem because it's prolonging it, and not realizing the fallout of that. Right now, China continues its policy that they do not want the disease to spread. They take a different tack than we have. So our current attitude in the United States is we only care if people die from it. But if you catch it, if you're in the hospital, so what? Live with it. Deal with it. This is just going to be painful, but it's not our problem. China's attitude is, no, we don't want the disease. They've been shutting down their factories. Where do Americans buy goods from? China. If you shut down a factory, then the supply curve moves backwards. It moves away. You get less supply. That makes prices higher because things are more scarce. So no one wants to say, oh, well, they don't want that. We have Putin and his aggression in Ukraine. There are a lot of people who like Putin. They don't want to say it, but they like Putin. They like what he's doing. So they don't want to blame Putin.
True.
They don't want to say one of the major oil producers isn't going to be on the market. If you shrink the supply of oil in the market, the price of oil goes up. They don't want to blame the market because they're the ones who benefit from the market forces. Right? If I'm a gas company, an oil company, and the price of oil goes up,
you're in the money
for me.
Right.
I want to bring up the market.
No,
absolutely.
Don't do that.
And so they want to silently get more money. I want somebody else to blame. Don't blame me because I'm making record profits.
Right.
You're making record profits. Blame somebody else because otherwise you might come after me. You might say, maybe we should tax those extra profits. I don't want that conversation. And notice their frame. Biden is to blame because he spent too much money. So this is an equation. You're saying the government put too much money out. Okay, fine. Now let's bring the money back in. How do you bring the money back in? I tax somebody. Do I want a discussion about taxing oil companies? No. I don't want that discussion. Do I want a discussion about taxing the corporations making excess profits? No, I don't want that conversation. Like Bakari raised before. How do you interpret this, that corporations are raising prices more than wages are going up, more than their non-labor costs are going up?
Yep.
Their profit margin has gotten bigger. Yep. Do I want a discussion on you taxing that? No, I do not.
Do not want that.
So this is all being framed in a way in the context, as you brought out, right? People are still nervous because COVID hasn't gone away.
No.
So people are still nervous because of that. They're still nervous because of the uncertainty that's going on right now. I mean, the war in Ukraine has serious consequences. They're nervous because we still have these fires out in California that are ahead of schedule. I mean, we're not supposed to have these fires till another couple of weeks, but suddenly we have the fires to do it. So there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of angst. I want a discussion that keeps you anxious. I want a discussion that keeps you, off balance. I do not want a discussion that turns the other way. It's very interesting. One of my roles at the AFL-CIO, where I'm the chief economist, is to participate with the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. It's the club of the advanced democracies.
Okay.
Europe, in response to this, European countries right now are giving money to moderate and low-income households to help them navigate these shocks, which no one is in control of. This is a market-based problem. Do we have a serious discussion in the United States saying, well, there's nothing we can do about China factories shutting down. We can't get Russia out of Ukraine fast enough, which is going to be a huge problem for grain prices. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. When they don't plant wheat, the rest of us suffer because, again, these are global prices. The price of wheat is a global price. Our farmers can produce all the wheat they want, but the rest of the world wants that wheat too. Everybody in the world is competing for wheat, just like everybody in the world competes for oil. The price is going to go up. We're going to have higher bread prices. We may even have some shortages because we can't get all the bread all the wheat that we want. And then some of the grain gets fed to animals in the United States. So this bids up the price of corn that goes into hogs and cows. So we're going to have higher prices for beef. Again, these are market forces. Europe's response, let's give money to help low and moderate income households. Our response is we don't want to discuss that. Why? Because we'd rather have a discussion that gets you all nervous.
Right.
Biden. And despite the fact that this is the best recovery we've had of the labor market, despite the fact that the Black employment to population ratio, the share of Black men who are working, is currently higher than pre-COVID. So for Black men, we've recovered from the COVID dip. I don't want you talking about that.
Right.
I don't want you saying, oh, we recovered. Our labor market is recovered. I don't want that discussion. I don't want you saying, oh, all that spending meant that people demanded goods, which meant that we got jobs. I don't want that conversation. I want you screaming and hollering as if Joe Biden invaded Ukraine, as if Joe Biden is the reason why oil prices are up, as if Joe Biden is over in China saying, shut down your factories.
Right.
Y'all can't get anything. I want you on a different subject, having a different debate. I want you screaming and hollering that this is horrible and we're going to drown. I don't want you raising taxes on my corporation. I don't want you raising taxes on rich people. I don't want you to discuss if there's too much money and people are spending too much money. I don't want you to say, look, the top 10% of the income distribution in the United States consumes as much as the bottom 40% combined. So if you're telling me the problem is too many people have too much money and are demanding too many things, if the top 10% are consuming as much as the bottom 40% combined, why don't you tax the top 10%? If you want consumption to fall, why don't you go where the money is? Why don't you go where the consumption is? I don't want that discussion.
So Mr. Spriggs, you're saying we're not having these conversations, and these conversations would I think for a lot of people would make it make people uncomfortable because they're going to have to face a different reality. It's easier, and I'm sure you understand this as an economist, as one who studies people's behaviors. You understand that people want to have a person to blame. There needs to be a scapegoat for somebody's pain, right? And so it's easy to point at the president on this issue. It's easy to point at the Republicans. But I'm glad that you're at least saying, hey, we need to have some different conversations, because I feel like we've gotten so wrapped up in the blame game and then waiting for somebody to come save us versus us saying, hey, this is the situation that we're in, so we're going to have to figure it out on our own until the government has a better plan or has any plan. But I feel like the missing piece is empowering people to make their own decisions and to figure out, to think critically on how to deal with this. Especially you're talking about families, right? Like my wife, my children. I don't wake up and say, man, I wish President Biden comes up with an inflation relief plan soon. I just readjust my spending. My wife and I, we readjust our spending and where we, how we consume and what's important, and just readjust our priorities in the household. Am I thinking on this in the right? Am I going in the right direction to expect this?
Well, in part, yes, because normally, like 99% of the time, economic fallout is the result of policy. Now, indirectly, a lot of what we're suffering are bad policies made in the past.
Yeah.
The fact that we are vulnerable to one nation and what happens with its economy and its impact on our inflation, that's the result of a series of bad policy choices that allowed our supply chains to become heavily concentrated in a few companies, and those companies in a lot of these cases are offshore. But as is the case with the current crises in infant formula, right? That's an American-based company, but it's one company, right? We all wake up and find out one company makes 40% of all the baby formula in the United States.
Damn.
So understanding, okay, so that's a series of policies that allowed the economy to be too vulnerable. Because of this concentration. That is true, but there's also reality that the market is what the market is. A lot of people in the United States, think that the invisible hand and the market are omnipotent and beneficent. In short, they worship the invisible hand as God. And when you tell them this is the problem of the market is doing this to you, they rebel because, oh my goodness, you can't say free market is bad. The free market is good, right? This is why they accuse Biden of being a communist. Anybody who speaks against letting the market do whatever the market wants to do you're a communist because you're offending their God.
Right.
So understand they don't want you to critique it, but understand, as you are rightly pointing out, right? So this is like a hurricane, and so there is a survival mode you need to get in. If a hurricane is coming, there's nothing Joe Biden can do about that.
No.
Anything anybody can do about it. So there are some things that, yes, we should do. But having said that, if you change the focus of the conversation, even though I know you said, I'm not waiting for Joe Biden to save me, nonetheless, we are empowered to ask, as we were with the hurricane, right? If a hurricane wiped out a city, then we would expect the government to step in and help the most vulnerable.
Right.
So the way that this is being framed, it's being framed in a way that cuts off our voice and takes away our power to ask for relief.
And Bakari, go ahead, Bakari. You want to share something about that?
I'm curious. I got I guess another question, because I think what I hear you describing all these like macro forces, right? And we're talking about the article that Farajii brought up for us to kind of like to spur this conversation on, is again talking about the folks that are at the most marginalized positions in our community, right? So macro all the way down to micro. So I guess, I think one of the things we try to bring forward in these conversations is like, what is it that we can do, right? So a hurricane is coming. That's, boarding up the windows. Is, what are the strategies? What does that look like on a grassroots level? And is it, without getting too negative, right? Is it too late? What are the tools that we can use? And I'm just curious if there are any things that about from a historical standpoint that our people have used. I'm thinking about like cooperative economics, shared resources. Like, is that could you see a resurgence of those sort of insular economies, if you will, taking place in response to the hurricane that's coming?
So, excellent question. Had we a stronger network of cooperatives, let's use food as an example, right? Cooperatives don't have to make profit.
Right.
So if we had such a thing, then yes, in a time like this, then what would happen is our food co-op wouldn't be gouging us.
Right.
And we would have an alternative. It would be limited because even the co-op is going to have to get beef and pork and eggs and chicken. So, but it would have been a way to ameliorate it. So it's a good way to ignite that conversation again and to think through what would be steps that are investments for the long run, right? Because this is one hurricane, there are going to be other hurricanes. We know this, right? There's no way we're not going to have one.
And I think, Mr. Spriggs, I mean, as we wrap up this part of the discussion, I think that's the reality, because I still believe, Bakari and Mr. Spriggs, I think that some of our people are kind of in a space of denial about where we currently are. And the other thing that I find culturally that happens within our community is we're always behind the 8 ball, right? When certain things happen, when certain forces like that hurricane is coming, like the hurricane is already here. We're already paying $7 in gas on the West Coast. We're paying, nearly $5 on the East Coast. The hurricane is here, and it's matter as at this point, it's just a matter of how to weather the storm. And like and I think you mentioned this, Bakari, how to survive the storm that we're already in.
Yeah, but there's a real danger to this, because Bakari's question also was from the past, lessons from the past. Let us not forget, which is why I was saying we got to pay attention to the real debate. When We had the oil crises of the late 1970s and the early 1980s because of Middle East conflict and the assertion by OPEC that they wanted a change in the terms of trade. They no longer were going to accept that the price of Kool-Aid was more than the price of gasoline. This was their great observation. Y'all run this entire world using our oil, but Kool-Aid costs more than our gasoline. If our gasoline is so important, how do we get less money than Kool-Aid?
Right.
But what was the response? The Federal Reserve stepped in and said, horrible inflation. Inflation is going through the roof. And they crashed the economy. They raised interest rates to deliberately crash the economy to make sure we wouldn't have inflation. Our unemployment rate went above 10%. It actually went to 20%. It did not come below 10% in any month. In any month until the middle of the 1990s.
Gee.
So this is why, as much as we like to talk micro stuff, understand the macro debate matters a lot.
Yeah.
Because the solution and the fight that's being fought is a fight about that level of austerity. And by making people so upset about inflation, it's to let them accept a set of policies that could crash the economy and send us back from having recovered from
short-term gains over long-term gains.
Woo! I gotta stop. Mr. Spriggs, I gotta stop the conversation right here. But I truly, truly appreciate you giving us some really thoughtful insight on how to look at this, that we are having the wrong conversation. And I agree with you. And I'm happy that you kind of helped to course correct us to make sure that we keep in mind what's most important. That the policies, there have been a number of policies that has brought us to this point. But even though that may be the case, the president himself is still trying to figure it out. Congress is trying to figure it out. They're going to rely historically on what was done in the past, raising interest rates and all of those things. But this is another opportunity for us as a community, as a people, to come up with some alternatives that are going to be more befitting us and where we are economically. So there's still a lot of discussion around it. I'm so happy that you were able to join us today to get the conversation started. And we'll certainly be, going back to this conversation very, very soon. Mr. William Spriggs, who is an economist from Howard University, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Brother Spriggs.
Yes, sir. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to be checking in with culture correspondent Ashley Banks to talk about Brittney Griner, to talk about what's happening with the Augusta riots, to talk about Jacob Blake, who was shot by a Kenosha police officer. We got a lot to get to, so we'll have that discussion. And then later, let me tell you about a group of Black mountain climbers that just made it to the top of Mount Everest and how they are just one of many. There's only a small number of Black climbers that have made it to the top. Why this feat is so historic. We'll have that conversation. So stay with us. A lot to get to in the next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second hour of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We wanted to switch gears to bring up to talk about some of the ongoing discussions that are happening across the country, some of the big national stories, and to join us to share with us and to give us these updates and keep us posted is culture correspondent. She is a writer for Essence.com and a number of other great publications. We're always happy to have her and to bring us the latest news. We are joined now by Ashley Banks. Ashley, good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Farajii?
I'm good. I'm going to just throw it out there. Have you recovered from your first year of law school?
I have not. I think it's going to take all summer to recover. I am still processing everything, trying to catch up from being sleep deprived. So to answer your question, no. I haven't recovered.
So we know that even though you have not recovered, you all have been able to accomplish something really, really big. You've been able to get through this. It's first year. So
first year is the roughest year. So
okay.
Accomplishment.
So everything else after this point should be easy?
Easier.
Yeah.
Easier, but we'll see because
right.
Results vary. So.
Absolutely. All right. So look, first and foremost, you've been following the story, and I want to bring in a culture crew member, Bakari Jones, back into this conversation as well. Bakari's been doing some pivotal work and in many different spaces. She's a strategist, entrepreneur, and nonprofit leader, as well as an activist and advocate for the LGBTQIA community. But Ashley, you've been keeping us posted about what's going on with Brittney Griner. First and foremost, Brittney seems to be, it seems like there might be an opportunity for her to come home. Is that what I'm reading and seeing?
Yeah, so that's a little uncertain. As we saw today, news broke where a Russian court has extended her detention in Russia. And so she'll be there at least until June 18th. So her lawyers were trying to get the court to approve house arrest. And so they were denied that. But there may be a possibility for her to return. Like I said earlier, it's uncertain. And I say that simply because Bill Richardson, he's now assigned to Brittney Griner's case. And just some background on Bill Richardson, he's the former ambassador to the UN, and essentially he helps during hostage situations. And recently he helped with a US-Russia exchange of prisoners. And so just last month, we saw where the US, they wanted to get back former Marine Trevor Reed. And so they exchanged him with basically a Russian pilot who had been detained been detained here in the U.S. for 20 years on drug charges. So essentially, they made that exchange to get Reed here, and so many are believing that Bill Richardson may be able to do the same and help Brittney Griner to come back to this country.
Was there a date, Ashley, that was determined? Is there a timeline for anything?
No, as of right now, no, it's up in the air. It's just essentially all we know is that Bill Richardson is on the case and he's doing what he can to bring her home. And the U.S. has said that she's wrongfully detained, which basically puts her under like a hostage situation. And so they're doing what they can to bring her over here, but there hasn't been a timeline release. And obviously there's no guarantees. All we know is that she's going to be over there at least until June 18th. And her attorneys believe, being that the extension is only a month, means that she's going to go to trial sooner than later.
I know that you had brought us up to speed on the fact that there were a number of, highly influential political voices, Hillary Clinton and others, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee and others, who had advocated for Brittney. How much weight did their voices make on getting on this case? How much has it made so far, or is it not really push the needle anywhere in any capacity?
I would have to say I believe their voices mattered, and I believe their voices carried weight, especially in the beginning. It helped to get public attention. And as we see, the government has done something by moving her. Instead of just saying that she's detained in Russia, they're now saying that she's wrongfully detained. And that puts her in another category where they can essentially bargain for her return. And so I think that's a big deal. As of right now, it's uncertain, right, what the outcome is going to be. But I do believe that the Hillary Clinton and Sheila Jackson Lee, I do believe that their voices carried weight. I mean, we do see a difference in how this case is being handled at the moment.
Bakari, and this is a very strange situation. I mean, we've actually been reporting on this for probably a couple of months.
Yeah. It's been 85 days.
Yeah.
It has been 85 days. It's astounding to me. The thing that comes up for me is, just being curious about who would need to be detained. And y'all think y'all understand what I say when I mean need to be detained, but who would need to be in Brittney Griner's position for a swifter action to be taking place, right? When this first broke, I remember there were so many comparisons to, a LeBron James. If this were LeBron James, what would be taking place? Mm-hmm. And that's just, it's so hard for me to put that out of my mind. If this person was not a woman, if they were not, a masculine presenting woman, if they were not a queer woman, like all of those variables combined, who would need to be in Griner's shoes for this to not be coming up on 100 days that she's being and now wrongfully detained. So it's very troubling to me. I think I understand that there's a way to do everything, right? So there's a protocol that the ambassadors have to take, right, to ensure safety. But it's terrifying to me to think about, what are the steps that have to take place to ensure her safety. And I'm not sure that any of us really know what that is. So it's like, is it chess? Is it checkers? We don't know. Just not knowing what game is even being played and what conversations have to remain behind closed doors to potentially ensure her safety. Is she safe in the first place? How are we, how do we trust the source that's reporting on her safety in the first place as well? So there are just so many variables to this case that are deeply, deeply troubling to me. So thank you, Ashley, for keeping us up to date with it and making sure that it stays on our minds.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's an excellent point. What did you hear, Ashley? What have you been hearing about her safety and her overall mental health and well-being?
No, like what was just said, I have been reading that the officials who have spoken with Brittney Griner say that she's safe and she's doing well as expected in this situation. But I do believe we should read these comments and hear these comments with a level of skepticism. Even as a journalist, I'm reading this and I'm just like, okay, these aren't words directly from Brittney Griner's mouth. How do we know that we can take this at face value? And so, I believe that it's very unfortunate that Brittney is in this position. And like we've stated before, if somebody else was over there, Steph Curry, as we've mentioned before on different shows, like we do believe things would have happened more swiftly and she wouldn't still be over there. And it's also that concern of why is she over there in the first place, simply because she needs to supplement her income because she's not getting paid as much as male players, right? NBA stars. And that's just not fair. And that's an easy solution that the US can implement to ensure that all of its WNBA players are safe and that they just remain in this country. They can leave the country to travel. And even if they want to participate in other leagues, they can do so, but they shouldn't have to feel like they have to do it in order to make the money that they deserve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we know that we'll keep our eyes open Ashley, you'll be bringing us up to date on that. Now, let's talk about this other story, Ashley, of the Augusta riots. The Department of Justice is investigating this 1970 jailhouse death of a 16-year-old by the name of Charles Oatman and the murders of 6 other people during a riot that happened in Augusta, Georgia. What was the tipping point to reopen this case? Because it's been 52 years.
Yeah, it's been quite a long time. So there was some new evidence that hasn't been released, but new evidence that got the DOJ interested in opening up this cold case. And so, as we know, in 1970, Charles Oatman, he was in police custody when he died. And so the police, of course, didn't point fingers at other officers. They just simply said that he died in police custody. There was an autopsy report that showed there was water in his lungs. So he died from drowning, and that there were deep gashes on his body and there were cigarette burns on his body. And so many of the residents in Augusta were like, wait a minute, this guy, this 16-year-old kid didn't just mysteriously die. Something had to happen here. And so they believed that officers did it. So then they started protesting for a couple of days. And during the protest, white officers unloaded their guns into the backs of 6 Black men who were unarmed and killed them. And so the end result was, in Charles Oatman's case, 2 Black teenagers were charged and convicted for his death, although many believe they had nothing to do with his death. And then in the case of the 6 Black men, there was one white officer who was charged, but he was acquitted. And both the juries in those instances were all white. And so we see what happened there, because that's been happening time and time again in history. And so people who are aware of the cases, or I guess had information and brought it forward to the DOJ, was enough for the DOJ to say, hey, we need to look further into what's taking place here. And the DOJ has been speaking to the public and asking the public if the public has any information regarding these cases to bring it forward, so that the families and the descendants, of Charles Oatman and these 6 Black men can finally see justice.
So one of the things about Charles Oatman is that he was 100 pounds, and they described him as being intellectually disabled. Does that play into what could have possibly happened to him?
Possibly. So he was in jail for allegedly shooting, I believe it was his niece.
His 5-year-old niece.
Mm-hmm. And so, but the family stated it was an accident. Him being mentally challenged, it was completely an accident. Nothing there was intentional. But the cops arrested him and kept him in jail for months anyway. And so the fact that he was killed, I don't know if being mentally challenged played a role in it, but the fact that he died of drowning and had these cigarette burns and deep gashes shows that he was tortured. It just shows that he was tortured, whether it was at the hands of the police or the hands of somebody the police hired to do it, or whoever, but he was in police custody. And so at the end of the day, the police are responsible, whether they are the ones who directly killed him or not.
Bakari, the Augusta riots, it lasted for 2 days, but the end result was 100 blocks of businesses were vandalized and burned. And I have to admit to myself, like I did not know about this until recently, that this even happened. We often talk about Tulsa, we talk about Rosewood, but we don't talk about what happened in 1970. This was fairly recent, right? This is not like the early 20th century. But 100 blocks, there were 1,000 people that were killed, according to the report. 1,000 people, 1,000 residents participated in this riot that lasted over 2 days. And I'm just wondering, like, man, we this is another piece of history, of our history, that I'm sure a lot of people didn't know. Nobody knows the story of 16-year-old Charles Oatman, and how this family of Mr. Oatman is still seeking justice.
I didn't know about this incident either. And it's always, actually, I imagine, you know, you have a perspective on this as well, but to examine the wording, right? Like we say 100 blocks of neighborhoods and businesses were vandalized. That is the end result. But to even frame that in a way that's not the outcry of a community after hundreds of years, you know, exploding as a result of that level of frustration. And I think, you know, that the level of torture, to know that this young person was drowned is reminiscent, you know, obviously I imagine for many of us of Emmett Till, in that same sort of way, where it sounds like it's very plausible that a child did something unintentionally, and in this instance harm was caused, right, the death of this young girl, but without the intention there, you know, it's hard not to see this as anything but a provocation. So even to see, you know, the caption of the story and the way that it's framed is saying, you know, as a result of, you know, the improper, you know, the unjust incarceration of a differently abled minor, right? Like there's so many other pieces that have to go along with just how this story is framed. And you know, it's a through line, I think, Farajii, of all the things we've been talking about, from the Negro League to inflation today, right? Like the opportunity to further cripple Black and brown communities from an economic standpoint, right? By just sort of that straw that breaks the camel's back, and now, you know, devastating 100 blocks. So it's fascinating. You know, I'm curious about once the case is reopened, what that could potentially mean for his particular family. But there's no compensation that replaces, you know, the loss of a child, and there's no compensation that could even begin to replace the devastation of 100 blocks of neighborhoods and communities. So those are my thoughts.
I just feel like, Ashley, that you know, one of our watchers, Taylor's brought it up. She said, you know, she didn't know it either. They said, did they even care that the young girl had been shot? Was this a crime of opportunity? The young boy was shot. And then bringing up the fact that by this happening in 1970, was there like a media blackout? Like, it just goes to show that there are still so many stories, Ashley and Bakari, that have yet to be told about our history that have happened 50 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's true. I tell these stories all the time. There was so much about Black history that I didn't know until I attended Morgan State University, and I was just blown away. I'm like, I've been on this earth for, I guess I was like 17 or 18 at that time. I'm like, I haven't heard about a half of these things. And still at the age I am now, I had never heard about the Augusta riots until I had to research it and do a story on it. And I'm amazed. It continues to happen. But I do hope, as technology continues to improve, and the fact that we have social media and we have platforms like yours, that we can continue to get these stories out and really cover them and talk about them, and you know, unearth the things that we need to know about. I mean, this is an important story. And I'm just happy that the DOJ is investigating it. But if they never announced that they were investigating it, I wonder if we'd ever know about those riots. So it's pretty interesting. Bakari was mentioning something earlier about, you know, the 100 blocks being destroyed. And that's the one thing I wish like certain media companies wouldn't focus on it, or certain, you know, media networks wouldn't focus on. We'll say when protests happen or the burning down of buildings take place, it's just an outward expression, right, of what people have been feeling for a very long time. And I remember covering the George Floyd case in Minneapolis, and the precinct was on fire. Turns out it wasn't even really protesters. It was people who were from around the country just creating mayhem, but people were blaming these protesters and calling them hoodlums. And in my head, I'm just like, well, I mean, you keep killing, you know, Black people. Enough is enough. People are going to get tired. I'm not condoning violence in any way, but some people, everyone has a breaking point, and you can't look at the outcome of a burning building. You need to look at the real issue. What is causing this? It's the police brutality. It's the systemic issues. It's, you got to get to the root of the issues and not look at what the result is. And
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I wish that instead of, I remember also really quickly with the Freddie Gray here in Baltimore.
Yep.
A lot of media companies, all they cared about was, let's get the fire. The CBS, I think, was on fire. Let's get people doing crazy things. It's going to be great for ratings. And it's like, that's not the story. If you're going to be the media,
I remember that.
Yeah, cover everything. Get to the bottom of it, so.
Absolutely. We got a few moments left, but I do want to, and I think this is a very, very interesting story. I don't know if I'm like in an alternate universe or what, but Jacob Blake, who was shot 7 times in the back by Kenosha, Wisconsin police officer Rustin Shesky. The shooting happened on August 23rd back in 2020. Blake apparently refused orders, and Officer Shesky responded to a domestic call. Blake refused their orders and was getting into an SUV when Shesky fired him 7 times in the back. Well, folks, Jacob Blake, who had filed a civil lawsuit against this Kenosha police officer, has decided to drop the lawsuit. And it was apparent, it was a one-page stipulation that was signed by lawyers from both sides that indicated that they agreed to dismiss this case with prejudice, meaning that Jacob Blake cannot refile the claim. It was also said that even though Blake had sued him back in March of last year, the court records, basically the court is going to dismiss this lawsuit. Why? Why? I didn't see anything as to why this happened, Ashley. What did you find?
That's the question everyone is asking Farajii. Why? And there's no answer that's been made public.
I mean, he shot him 7 times in the back, Bakari.
In the back.
And no civil, I mean, he filed the lawsuit, but then mysteriously drops it.
With prejudice. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, Jacob Blake is paralyzed from the waist down. He may never be able to walk again. And many of us, if we were shot and couldn't walk again, we'd file lawsuits. So it's going to be interesting to find out why this was dismissed. It's interesting that they are keeping it hush hush. So it just makes me think, like, what is this really about? Some people were speculating and hoping that they settled, but usually settlements are made public. It would have been reported by now. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But Farajii, and it doesn't make sense to me as to why this was dropped.
Let me tell you, it doesn't make sense to our watchers either. Janae checked in and said, "Oh no, I hope he wasn't coerced. He survived the near bullets, and to say he can't bring it back, that's not what his father wanted." Taylor said, "The rest of the story." Jane L checked in and said, "Look, they dug up something on him or something close to him." Brother King Lee said, "Look, perhaps Mr. Blake was told by his legal representation to drop the case because of Blake's troubled criminal background." I don't know. Lana, one of our great watchers, she was like, "Oh, wait a minute, what?" With the eyes emojis, like, what? He did what? Like, Jacob Blake was one of those cases back in 2020 that got national attention and it got people in the streets protesting. And 2 years later, we're talking about a drop lawsuit, Bakari.
I am so curious about the reason why.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if it's any, to the listener who commented, they dug up something about his past or his criminal record. That shouldn't, I don't know how is that fair for that to have a bearing on that?
I mean, it shouldn't have a bearing.
It wouldn't, because it's a civil case. If it were,
that's what I'm saying. This is a civil case.
A civil case, and at the time, Blake was wanted on a felony sexual assault, and that was dropped. And so, nothing criminal would have a bearing on this civil case.
Right. So I'm like, I don't know how does that even come into play with this? So I'm curious about whether or not there's any obligation and whether or not if he even is in a position where he can make a statement, right? Like if there's some other arrangement or agreement that is just not coming to the light for the general public.
Right.
Oof.
Right. Absolutely. And Janae checked in the back end and she was like, was Crump on that? Benjamin Crump. Was he the lawyer for Jacob Blake at that time?
Maybe at the time.
I gotta check.
Now,
yeah.
It hasn't been mentioned. I tried looking to see if Benjamin Crump made a statement. And I feel like that would have been everywhere, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I know that he represents, he represents a lot of these families and he's made, these high profile lawsuits. And Ben Crump goes after that money. So he ain't even trying to hear, hey, Janae, Ben Crump ain't even trying to hear no drop lawsuit where he can get money from an unjustified shooting. Y'all hear me? Donita said this is super fishy. It ain't super fishy. It's beyond super fishy. I'm telling you, it's beyond super fishy. I don't know. We will see if Ben Crump was the lawyer on his case. I don't think he was.
He was one of the lawyers.
Oh, he was one of the lawyers.
The suit last year. So there were a series of lawyers that were on it. But I don't know what happened with Crump in between then and now, because I haven't seen from Crump. So it could be something as simple, I'm just speculating here, as the attorneys believing that they really just don't have a winning case. And there's no need to keep pursuing it. Or it could be something obviously a lot deeper than that may never come to light. But you rarely see this take place. Especially a high profile case like this. So even if
I don't know if you are shooting a man in the back 7 times, that sounds like the man is running from you.
Yeah, but Blake admitted that he had a knife. And of course the officer at the time claimed that he felt threatened and thought he was going to hurt him. Blake maintains that he wasn't threatening the officer. He was just trying to get into his vehicle when he was shot. But even in situations where we've seen where the officers are acquitted of any wrongdoing, civil cases still happen. And in those situations, the victims' families win those cases. And so,
civil cases, they go after the officer themselves and not the department. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just fishy. So,
what'd you say?
It's very fishy, but I guess.
Oh gosh, it is. It's a fish market. It's a fish market. Lake trout, salmon, it's everything right there. Like I don't get it. Somebody talked to my aunt to have that contingent that he can't refile. That's weird to me.
Yeah.
That's really, really weird. I hope other victims of police brutality, I don't know. I was going to say, I hope they don't, follow that same path. But I mean, I always seek justice. If the situation like that happened to me, I'm trying to get justice. I'm trying to make the officer feel that type of pain as much as I felt the pain.
Exactly. Looking for every avenue.
What'd you say?
Looking for every avenue. Every law, trying to figure out how to make it work. But once again, if the lawyers felt like there was no way that they were going to win the case, then
right.
But I am curious to see why Benjamin Crump, I don't think, has said anything.
That is interesting. Portia Lewis checked in and said, "Laws does not equal justice. Laws are meant for poor people, not them." Well, we will certainly keep our eyes on that. Ashley Banks, what's the next big thing that we need to keep our eyes on with you, Ashley? I know that you're always writing the stories and doing some great things. Are there some things that we need to keep our eyes on with you?
Just wait and see, but be sure to follow me on Instagram at Ashley M. Banks and just follow my work that I'm doing with Essence.
You're doing fantastic work. We're happy to have you a part of the team here on the Black Star Network and the Culture. And thank you so much for being with us today. And get some rest, Ashley.
Will do. Thank you.
And celebrate. Celebrate. Make sure you celebrate.
For sure. Thank you. Thanks, Bakari.
All right. You're welcome. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back here, let's talk about the first all-black team of mountain climbers that has reached the top of Mount Everest and so much more. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
All right, folks, it's time for a little celebration. We've been talking a lot about a lot of big topics this week, and I found this story, and I said, you know what? We should celebrate these folks. Bakari, I want to bring you into this. First, we if you did not know, there is an all-black team of mountain climbers that have decided to do something that many people have said is impossible, even though 4,000 people have reached the top of Mount Everest. Guess how many, Bakari, were actually black before today, before this time? No, you're not. No, not quite. 8. So it's damn near like 0, right? 8. Yeah, folks. Out of 4,000 people who have reached the top of Mount Everest, only 8 of them were actually black. And so there's a group of mountain climbers called Full Circle, which is our group of climbers and mountaineers. This is the very reason they were formed. And they decided to take on Mount Everest and do this expedition and to do it big. And look at them. Look at them there. Full Circle. They are composed of climbers from around the country, and one of the big things that was determined by this group is that they wanted to do an expedition about climbing, but it's also, according to one of their members, that it is also about spending time in the mountains and about building community, global community, and changing the narrative about what Black people can do, particularly in the United States, and how we interact with outdoor space. Let me just tell y'all something. This is fantastic, first and foremost, but I think people need to know Black folks love outdoor stuff. We love that. Like, I enjoy hiking. I enjoy, my wife loves hiking. We go hiking a lot. We do. I actually saw Diddy on IG, Bakari, go hiking with his family out in California, and I was like, man, I'm jealous. But I love hiking. I mean, we do a lot of stuff that we like. People generally don't think that we do: camping, hiking, biking. Let me check in with my culture crew online to see what folks like to do. What y'all like to do, folks? Because I think people tend to believe that we just not outdoorsy people. Like, we want to stay in the house and drink, just drink. What do you drink? Moscato and all this stuff. Just do some other. Okay, all right, Bakari. I was just saying. I'm just saying. What do you like to do outdoors? Are you an outdoors person?
I do enjoy the outdoors. I like. I'm not necessarily like hardcore into hiking, but I do enjoy, I'll say, nature walks. I did, though, when I was in middle school going into high school, I think I might have been I was in high school. I had the opportunity to do Outward Bound.
Okay.
It was 2 weeks, and so it was a week of camping and a week of canoeing, and I loved it. I have not been canoeing since high school, but I loved it, and it's one of those things that's on my bucket list. I think that for me, again, economics is on the top of my brain today. I cannot think of the name of the company. There's a Baltimore-based company that's Black woman owned that is going to be renting camping gear specifically for this reason, because she recognizes that Black folks are in this space. We enjoy this space and we don't necessarily always have the resources. One of the things that popped out for me with about the Full Circle group is, the financial costs associated with this climb. So, for them to organize resources, and I can't even imagine once you climb a mountain together, the highest mountain in the world together, there's going to be a whole lot of conversation and community built that's going to be, be felt for decades, right? So this is good news, Farajii. I appreciate you kind of wrapping us up with something that was a little more positive today.
Let me tell you, because check this out, because they were able to get to the top of Mount Everest, they doubled the number of Black people in one hike, in one climb. That's still crazy to me, though, right?
Yeah,
they doubled it, so it went from 8 to 16 with one group, Full Circle. But they also, this is the other thing about it, because also as a part of this great journey, they wanted to show some level of reverence and be respectful to the people where Mount Everest is, to the Nepalese and to the Sherpas. And they wanted to start to build relationships, because people oftentimes come to Mount Everest and really don't show appreciation to the natives of that part of the world. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. Man, we got some beautiful hearts, man. We got beautiful hearts, man. And to take the time out to say, you know what? Let's make sure that we should show them the way, because one of their guides was a Sherpa. So they wanted to make sure that they do that. Then the other thing that I think is very positive and empowering is that they believe, and this is from Full Circle, they believe that the mountain is just a metaphor. Like, you can overcome any obstacle in your life if you decide to do it, if you put your mind to it. And I remember, thinking about little things that were told to me when I was a little boy, like, if you just want to do it, if you want to do it, You can do it. It's just so empowering to see us in a space where we're still breaking barriers and we're doing it with a smile.
Yeah. That was the biggest takeaway. For me, Outward Bound is nothing compared to Mount Everest. But, I think once you experience that level of physical, like that level of physical challenge, and you overcome it, it's not impossible, right? But it's really difficult to accomplish that and then see any other problem that's on flat ground, that's on, in a space where you can comfortably breathe the air, that you don't need however many layers of clothing on to stay warm. If once you got to the top of Mount Everest, what can't you do?
Come on.
See that, right? Like, that's what it is. So this exciting to me, and I hope that more folks are able to to make that context, you know what I mean? To draw that that perspective from this summit, Shout
Absolutely.
Out
Let me tell you. Let me see. I love this. McCole, look at that. First and foremost, look at that, y'all. Full circle. Y'all notice the red, black, and green?
You see it.
Y'all see that? The great liberation colors. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm all for it.
Beautiful.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. This is beautiful, man. This is absolutely beautiful. Look, I love what hey, Bakari, check this out. McCole checked in on our YouTube page and said, I love the outdoors as long as I have some mosquito spray. Those mosquitoes will tear your legs and arms up. If you
McCole want to go glamping, not camping, but glamping.
If you want to bring black folks outdoors, you got to make sure there are no bugs.
We'll glamp. We will glamp, Farajii, but camp.
The first sighting of a mosquito, we like, you know what? This is too much for me. I'm out of here. You packing up the sleeping bag and putting all the food back into the backpack. Like, I'm done. These mosquitoes, nah. You start slapping, girl. I'm out of here.
Gotta go. Got to go. This is a beautiful thing, though. I hope it leads to more opportunities for them, you know, as a collective, you know, to lead other folks through, you know, similar nature-based experiences. Who knows, endorsements. I hope they get it all.
Absolutely. All right, look, folks, I want to do something different. We're going to take a final break. When we come back, I want to hear what stories this week you really touched you, which stories really resonated with you. We call it Your Culture Story. And I want to just throw it in the chat to say, hey, Farajii, when y'all talked about this or when y'all talked about that, which story really resonated with you? We'll have that when we come right back. So stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, as we wrap up this week, normally I do a last word, but today I wanted to do something a little bit different because I thought about you and I said, well, let me ask my faithful watchers, what is the story that impacted them the most? So we like to call this is a brand new segment called Your Culture Story. And you could just put it in the chat and say, hey, Farajii, the story that y'all talked about, this one, or if we didn't talk about it, something that you may have read, something you have seen this week that you really really touched you in a very good way. You know, let's end the show on a high note, on a positive note. I want to ask Bakari. Bakari, was there any story this week that really touched you? I know you don't consume. You don't consume negativity a lot.
Farajii, look, the way my chakras is set up, it's a lot. It's a lot. There's not one that is coming to the top of my mind.
I got one. I'm gonna kick it off.
Go ahead.
Kick it off. So Kendrick Lamar's album is out today, and everybody is talking about it. He's trending on Twitter and all of the other spaces. But the conversation around his artistic expression, whether you like it, whether you like him or you don't like him for what's in the album, I simply just love the fact that we're having real, very empowering conversations about Black artistry. You know what I mean? Like he's bringing a certain level of critical thinking into the conversation about what it means to be an artist and all of that. His album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I love it. And I feel like Kendrick, for example, he just continues to push the culture. Now, there's some elements of the album that, like I was listening to it earlier today, and there's some things that I have to be like, all right, let me go back. I gotta go back to listen to this dude because it's so much. It's 18 tracks.
Oh wow! Evenly
divided between Volume 1, which is Mr. Morale, and then Volume 2, the Big Steppers and the Big Steppers. Wow. And what I've heard from it, production is on point. He got lyrics for days, flow for eons. And it's going to take you a while to decipher and dissect everything. So
that's the best, though. We keep picking away at it.
You keep picking away at it. Absolutely.
I feel like mine is local. I learned this week that another micro business, so less than 10 employees, Baltimore-based. She participated in a local business pitch competition. It's called Crab Tank, right? So like the Baltimore version of Shark Tank. She competed in the competition and won $27,500 for her startup. She creates the like running mitts that you put on your hands when you go outside and run, and it's freezing cold. So it's local news, it's micro news, but learning that, and as a result, she was able to proceed with some of her production. So she has the potential to, add some additional jobs and some additional energy and momentum to our economy. So that is micro, super local news. But I learned that this week and was very excited to hear about that. So White Paw Run Mitts is the name of the company.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah. All right, folks are checking in. Zoe checked in. Zoe Bing said, I enjoyed the Farajii. I enjoyed the side hustle segment. We need that as a regular topic. Bakari, we talked about how do you balance your 9 to 5 with your side hustle. And we talked about that just like yesterday or day before. And it was a good segment. It was like we all have side hustles.
Yep.
And it's interesting how 9 to 5 jobs now are becoming less restrictive about side hustles, and they recognized it. And I think it was one of our watchers, either Damon or Brother King Lee. I think it was Damon or Brother. I got brothers, y'all know. Y'all tell me, Brother King Lee, Damon. Let me know. But it was said that when they were hiring people, they told people, hey, have a side hustle because I ain't gonna keep. You ain't gonna be working for me forever. And I loved it. So Zoe, I did enjoy that segment. I appreciate that. Who else we got? Belinda said, The story that impacted me this week was the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's birthday. His birthday was on May the 11th. He turned 89 years old this week. One of the great voices for Black liberation in this country and around the world. I posted something on my social media about it. I think a lot of people may not know, but he's been doing this work for over 60 years, Bakari.
Wow.
60 years. And, you know, I've had the great honor and the privilege and pleasure of organizing locally in Baltimore the 2015 Millions, the Jesters or Else movement that we had in October of 2015. And that was the 20-year anniversary of the Million Man March. And as the local organizer, we had meetings with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Wow.
And met him and, you know, just let him see my face. And phenomenal experience. If you never met the minister, like, you will be super, super surprised about how low-key he is. Like, he's very, and you feel this power. You're like, oh, like, oh, okay.
I can only imagine. Woo!
We see the fiery minister. We see, we read about him in publications and mainstream media.
Right.
And we like, oh my gosh, and we have very strong views about him. And that's what he believes, that's what he propagates, but at the same time, wonderful human being.
Yeah.
I mean, he's some people might say, oh, he hate white people. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Trust and believe me. He doesn't. He treats everybody with great courtesy and respect. So we definitely put that out there. Yep. Damon said that was Brother King Lee that said that he did the side hustle. He encouraged his employers to have side hustles. That was awesome. Awesome. The town hall Roland moderated yesterday was very informative. We need more of those. That's from Karen Coffee Colton. Yes. Of course, Brother Roland going to continue to do these great town halls. Folks, that's why I always tell you, make sure that y'all turn on your notifications for Black Star Network, because it is those type of events that we have, that we host, that Brother Roland hosts, and trust and believe the culture is going to hit them streets this summer. We're going to be somewhere talking to somebody, Bakari.
Popping
so
up.
We're going to do our part. So those dates will be coming up. But yes, big shout out to Big Brother Roland for doing
I've
that.
been trying to care for my lawn myself, but it's difficult to figure out exactly.
Also, Biden giving another $444 billion US tax dollars to Ukraine.
I mean, you still
I
have.
don't know why. Is that a good story?
You know, so that's certainly an important point there.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll talk. We'll look at that. So, folks, like I said, sometimes we're going to be doing this. Just checking in with you guys to make sure that we are talking about the things that are most important to you.
Again,
so please let you
mentioned
just keep
earlier
in mind that every so often when I ask you, what is your culture story? What's your favorite culture story, or what's the story that impacted you the most? Whether we talked about it on the show or not, but it's some good stuff. And we gotta just keep in mind we have to make sure that in spite of all of this other stuff about changing the system and all of those things, you and I talked about this a lot, Bakari, keeping your mind in a space of positivity.
Yep.
Being intentional about the information that you consume and making sure that your health, your well-being is not disrupted by all of the madness going on around us. If y'all didn't know, Bakari is a huge advocate of that. She was like, she tell you, look, man, I'll shut off the phone. I'll turn off the social media. I'll check out.
Quick, fast. Do not disturb.
Did you say quick, fast?
Do not disturb.
We have
a responsibility. We got to sometimes take a pause.
Yeah.
Round, regroup. Farajii, look, you're doing an incredible job raising the vibration and raising the level of awareness of the culture, of our people, of our communities. And that is work that is worth sustaining. If we're going to sustain it, we gotta protect ourselves, And I think that starts with what we're consuming. It plays in the subconscious mind, all types of things, Farajii. So it's something that's worth doing. But I appreciate the God and light that you are, brother. So
I appreciate you.
Another incredible week, man.
Oh, another incredible week. All right, Bakari. Well, we thank you. And I thank all of y'all for just sharing with us your culture stories. Which, again, we will certainly check back in with you in a couple of weeks to hear what you have to say. But Bakari, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you're continuing to do. And certainly thank you for being so good for the culture.
Absolutely, brother. All right, man.
Appreciate you. Folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank you. Had a phenomenal week. We got a lot. We covered a lot. We shared a lot. I mean, it's just been an excellent, excellent week. Had a lot of great guests this week. If you haven't checked it out, make sure y'all go to blackstarnetwork.com and you can see all of the latest, the replays of all of the past shows that you may have missed. I mean, some of our more memorable shows, all of that is right there on our website. Beautiful, beautiful website. When you click onto that website, you will see, boom, the culture right there. Look at that fine man. Woo! Let me stop playing. Yeah, that's you can find that at Black Star Network. Oh, yeah. Also, Roland Martin's on there as well. Let me stop playing. Of course, Roland Martin is on there. All that, and of course, Get Wealthy is on there. The Black Table, the new episode dropped yesterday with Dr. Carr. That's on there. And Living a Balanced Life is on there as well. All of the great programming. And of course, you know, all of the special events that we've been hosting, like the town hall meeting and everything else. Big shout out to our engineer, our control room, and to the man that's making it happen each and every day for us, my man Keenan, for doing an exceptional job. He has been rocking and rolling everything that you see behind the scenes in terms of making sure like the streams and all of those things, keeping us up to date. Keenan is working hard. So Keenan, thank you. Big shout out to our producers, Joel and Shannon. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And most importantly, big shout out to you for tuning in each and every week. So make sure y'all support us at the Black Star Network. You can do that, blackstarnetwork.com, and through all of the various pay platforms, you can do that. That's all happening so well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, folks, it is Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe this weekend. And God willing, we'll be talking again on Monday. Stay tuned, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Roland Martin Unfiltered with Big Brother Roland and all of his wonderful contributors on there. So make sure y'all check him out. And as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk on Monday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace, family.